Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. This is Smart TCG, and today I'm going to be going over my Surging Sparks tier list. Surging Sparks is the brand new set to come out in the Pokemon TCG, and it has shook up the metagame just a little bit. There's a lot of really cool new cards. Definitely not the most crazy impactful set, but has a lot of really nice complementary cards, and also has some decks as well that I think have some potential. So, with that being said, enjoy the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and let's hop right into it. So we got ourselves tier S here. I'm going to say this right now. I don't think there's going to be a tier S deck. I don't think there's anything that's far and away stronger than everything else, especially in that, tier 1. I don't think there's going to be any deck that's just undisputedly better in pretty much every single way. So just kind of putting that out right now, we're probably not going to have ourselves a tier S deck, but we will have plenty of tier 1, tier 1.52, and also fun tier decks. So let's hop right into it here. We're going to start off with some of the brand new decks, the decks that a lot of people are kind of wondering, where are they going to sit? So we're going to start with Ceruledge EX here. This is a deck that has been getting probably the most talk out of all the new decks. It has been performing okay in Asia. I have seen some placements from it, and I think it actually has a decent amount of potential. It's able to do a lot of damage for not a whole lot of resources. It's, pretty easy to be able to get to the point where you're able to take those big one-shots over and over again. It is very, very linear, though, which is kind of the problem. And I guess you kind of have to ask yourself, is this deck better than things, like Raging Bolt, right? So I think this deck has a lot of potential. I think it's definitely going to show up and see success. It can do crazy amounts of damage really, really quickly, which I think is a big thing that's going for it. So we're probably going to put it at the bottom of tier 1.5. It has felt okay, and it definitely has, the kind of capabilities to just, pretty much run everything over. So yeah, it's pretty good. I like it. Next up, we got Archelunan. Archelunan is a deck that has been getting some talk with the Relicanth. I think this deck is just okay. I don't think it's overwhelming in any way. Two shots, a lot of things, has a lot of HP. It's just kind of average overall, but I definitely think it's formidable, and I think we'll see some success. I don't think it's broken in any way, but I think it's okay. Next up, we got Lost Zone Toolbox Pikachu. Pikachu, arguably the most talked about card from this brand new set, being able to deal 300 damage and also having that ability allowing it to survive with 10 HP if it were to be knocked out in one hit. I think this deck is good. I think this deck has a lot of potential, being able to Mirage Gate and take big one-hit KOs on the majority of the format, and also not being able to get one shot back in just like most scenarios is just like very good. So, yeah, I think this deck is very solid. I think Lost Box is probably the way to play it. Magneton is cool. I do think Magneton is cool, and also Blissey. However, I think those archetypes are a little bit more inconsistent and shaky, and I think that's the problem with them. I think that Magneton probably overall is the second most consistent, but things like Blissey, you have to get Trumpet, you have to get the Blissey out as well to then actually move the energies, and it just doesn't feel very consistent. So I think a deck that is able to consistently use Pikachu over and over again is going to be probably the most successful one, and I think that Lost Zone Toolbox paired up with Pikachu will be that. So yeah, we got Pikachu Magneton tier 2. We got Blissey, put it into tier 2 as well. The Regigigas variant, I think, is just fun. I think Regigigas in general is just way too inconsistent. In theory, the deck is amazing. In theory, you're like, well, what if you get all these Regis out? Then, you can do pretty much whatever you want. However, this unfortunately does not really happen most of the time. You're not actually able to do those things. So we're going to put the Regi Pikachu down here. But it is a fun deck. All right, moving on here, we got Klawf. Klawf is going to be, I would say, probably bottom of tier 2 here. It's okay. Not necessarily overwhelming in any way. You do, thankfully, hit one-shots on Pikachu because of poison. Being able to knock out Pikachus very consistently because of poison is very, very nice. You get through that ability, which is pretty good. Next up here, we'll go into, let's do some popular decks right now. I think Lugia is great. Lugia is still very solid. I think that Pikachu is going to be a little bit annoying for it, but I don't know how popular Pikachu is necessarily going to be. You have lots of one prizers, access to, something like Legacy Energy as well. So it's definitely not the end of the world. I still think Lugia is very, very good overall, and definitely is going to be a tier 1 deck. Next up, we have Trapagos. I think Trapagos is still great. Very solid deck. This is a format that I don't think changes drastically. It's more or less just a format that adds in, a couple of new decks that, like those decks that are, I think, like that are coming out aren't really pushing any of the other top decks out of the format, just kind of from my experience. So I think it's just, kind of adding complementary pieces. So with that being said, I think Trapagos is still absolutely fantastic deck. You can play it with or without the Bouffalants. Very, very good. Next up, we have Charizard. Charizard does gain the brand new Trolley card. The Precious Trolley is pretty good in this deck. Allows you to cut down on some of your ball counts, play Trolley, and then since you're able to cut down on some of those search counts, it allows you to be able to get those, other tech cards that you might feel like you're missing against certain matchups. Things like maybe Temple of Sinnoh, maybe Enhanced Hammer for Lugia. You just have more space. You just have more space with access to Trolley. You can play things like Lost Vacuum as well. There's just more, things you could potentially do with the list now that you have access to Trolley because you can thin out some of those ball counts. So Zard is still great, still very solid deck. Definitely going to see success. Very, very good. We got Ogerpon. Noivern Ogerpon, I think, is probably just a fun deck at the moment in this format. Definitely struggles against some things. I think it's just pretty average as of right now. Next up, we got Dragapult. Dragapult tier 1.5. Still very, very solid deck. I think Charizard overall is still just slightly better, my personal opinion. So put that there. Next up, we got the Lost Box decks. I do think that Pikachu has a chance against Regidrago just because you're able to one-shot so quickly. Whereas the other Lost Box variants do admittedly kind of struggle to that. So we're going to put pretty much all the Lost Box decks in tier 2. As opposed to Pikachu, I think we'll go in 1.5. So we'll put Radzard and then just the Turbo variant in the second tier. Next up, we got Regidrago. Regidrago is still fantastic, still one of the best decks in format. Probably overall the best deck in the format. Not necessarily an S tier, I think, right now. I think it's not necessarily far and away better than all these decks, but I still think it is very, very good overall and definitely deserving of its top dog status in the format. Hydreigon, this deck doesn't set up all the time. It's fun, but for the amount of energies that you commit, for the amount of time that you commit to setting up, I think that it is more of a fun deck. It is cool, though. Definitely something that I might feature on the channel at some point, trying to get it to work. But I do think it is a fun deck as of right now. Along with these guys as well, still very, very cool, but I'm not able to consistently set up or, really do enough in the format. Palossand. As well, we'll put down there as well. As I kind of said, this is a set with not a whole lot of, you could say, tier 1 archetypes, but has a lot of, really cool things that maybe in the future as the metagame kind of shifts, they actually become. Next up, we got Gholdengo. Gholdengo is a solid tier 2 deck. Definitely deserves its spot in tier 2. Raging Bolt's tier 1.5 is still very, very solid deck overall. You do take a iffy matchup against things like Terapagos and also Charizard, one of the things that is kind of holding it back. Also, if Lost Box Pikachu does become more popular, that can pose an issue because you can't actually one-shot Pikachu due to its ability, which is very, very annoying. So they can just one-shot you and then you can't really one-shot them back. So that's kind of an issue. And then like Ceruledge as well could potentially start the 2-prize trade, but they can start off with all, 1 prizes on the board and then start to evolve. So, that's also kind of another thing as well you have to deal with. But you are, I guess, a more consistent one-shot deck compared to Ceruledge. So there is that going for you. Next up here, we got Giratina. Giratina is, I think, still in fun tier overall. I think, Ancient Box is like bottom of tier 2. It's not necessarily a terrible deck, but definitely in tier 2. So we got mostly other, I guess, meta decks as of right now. We got Gardevoir. Gardevoir has been seen talk recently. It paired up with the heavy Bravery Charm research, kind of similar to that Henry Chow list that has been seen some success. I think this deck is great. I think it's much better than people give it credit for. It doesn't really struggle to Pikachu per se because you can use the Monkey Dory to be able to damage Pikachu. So you can kind of get around that. Your prize trades are just kind of naturally favorable in that sense as well. So I think Gardevoir is great. I still think it's a very, very formidable deck. I definitely expect it to see success. Next up here, we got Palk. Palk Dusknoir. Pretty good still, 1.5 deck. I actually do like the Palk Terapagos variant too. That has been seeing some play. Also, I think that deck is kind of viable. People have been kind of, I guess, saying, oh, like what happens if, Pikachu just like one-shots you? Well, yes, that is the case, but Pikachu is also able to one-shot a lot of other things in the format. Things like Raging Bolt, Regidrago, pretty much anything that is not a stage 2 EX Pokemon, they're able to one-shot. So I would say that you don't have to worry too much about type disadvantage playing Palkia, because pretty much all these other decks get one shot by Pikachu, so that's something to worry about. All right, got Miraidon. Miraidon's still tier 2. You could potentially play some of the new lightning stuff with it, but it's kind of difficult to do that. So we're just gonna put it in tier 2 right now. We got Iron Thorns. Iron Thorns is a deck that if you hit the right matchups, your deck can feel like a tier 1 deck, but if you hit the wrong matchups, your deck can feel like a very, very mediocre rogue deck. So I think it's just a solid tier 2 deck. Nothing super special about it, but you can, cheese people with things like Pokemon Catcher and also Crushing Hammer. So if you flip well, definitely is pretty good. Next up, we got Pidgeot. Pidgeot Control Ogerpon. That's also a tier 2 deck. I think also Snorlax as well. Block still, just a tier 2 solid deck. Potentially bottom of tier 1.5. Snorlax is kind of always there. So I would not be surprised if it popped up into tier 1.5. So we're going to put it right there at the very bottom. I still respect the deck. Next up, we got Gardevoir Bayonet. I've played this deck, actually. I think it's pretty good. I've played a few games with the Magnus Peterson list that got top 4 at Gdańsk Regional Championship, and it feels pretty decent. The only thing that actually, in my opinion, holds this deck back compared to regular Gardevoir is its consistency issues. The deck does have some consistency problems, and your Lugia matchup is very, very difficult, whereas the other variant does much better into Lugia. There's a couple things there, is that you play things like Screamtail to be able to snipe, Archeopses as well, so like you have those, kind of options. However, you're just not able to as efficiently I guess accomplish the same things that, the Gardevoir, just like regular turbo variant is, versus, some of those, more difficult matchups. So I think that's why it goes here, but it is pretty decent. It does do pretty good against a lot of decks. Your Charizard matchup is pretty good. Your Regidrago matchup is pretty decent as well. Your Trapagos matchup is pretty much a coin flip. If you're able to item lock them before they get Pidgeot out, you're typically in a very, very good position. So that's another thing too. But anyways, that's going to do it here for the video. If you enjoy the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I've been away for some time out of the country, but I'm back, so expect some content coming out soon. And I will also be attending Latin American International Championships next week. So if you see me there, make sure to say hi. But all right, thanks so much. I appreciate it. This is Smart TCG, and I'll speak with you again soon. Peace out.